Hmm. So there's a question which has been asked. What does an enlightened person look like? What does an enlightened one look like? Hmm. So this is the mind. This is the mind which is asking this question. What does an enlightened person look like? It's the mind asking this question. Or what does a guru look like? Or something like that. Because the mind is trained for protection, right? From childhood, you're always trained for protection, right? In some form or the other, you want to protect yourself. And the idea of protection is that you don't want to, you want to survive. You don't want to get somehow, you know, sabotaged, so to say. So, what is enlightenment? Enlightenment has many definitions, different traditions. Someone will say it's nirvana, someone will say it's moksha. In the European time, in the European culture, enlightenment, the word when it was actually founded was at a very different meaning. It has someone with a lot of knowledge, and it had a linear connotation. But in the Indian spiritual style tradition is what we are sort of addressing. So as far as spirituality is concerned, it is a very dicey thing. It's a very tricky thing because uh, the kind of sadhanas, the kind of conditioning that people have had right from their childhood, and what kind of practices they did, what kind of traditions they were associated with, what have been their influence, all these things are going to dictate uh, what they look like, what kind of vibe they gave, or what kind of energy they gave out. So there's no one there's no one standard way they will look like. So some people think they'll have a big beard, so they are enlightened, or they'll have a shaved head, or something like that. But all of that is very external. It is very external. And some of them say they should have a very glowing aura. But I've met people who are very deep, who've had a very profound journey, who've also made it to some kind of realization, but they don't look, glamorous, or they don't look charismatic, or they don't look in a certain way. So that is the whole point, that you are not going to look in a certain way because of your spiritual advancement. Against the idea of advancement or enlightenment, it means that someone is on a higher rung than you. You're trying to see whether he's made it, whether he's at a higher level. So again, that is a more materialistic definition. It is not actually a very uh, inherently spiritual definition. And the very idea of non-duality is that everything is one. So we learn from everything. And the guru, like I went to someone called as Ganga Ma in Tiruvannamalai. She does a lot of satsangs in Tiruvannamalai, but I met her pre-satsang days, and she said, the guru is not, and that was the time when I was probably hunting for a guru or something like that, for a teacher. And yeah, why I'm telling this, because the idea is to share, what I've gathered over the last uh, 2 decades of exploring, wandering, whatever you want to call it. So, so my friends, the thing is that I was discussing this with Ma Ganga, and uh, she said to me, that Guru is a tattva. It's not the person. Guru is a tattva, the element that guides you. So the Guru will always guide you, in different ways. And I was talking to Dr. Yugandhar, who's a very one of the realized or whatever, renowned spiritual masters. And he told to me, he said, you can learn many things from bad people. You can learn from gangsters. You can learn from policemen. You can learn from everyone. So it's not that you're only going to learn from the so-called, spiritual gurus. And one of the problems in the spiritual world is this branding. There is some sort of branding that a guru should look in a certain way. He has to wear certain kind of clothes or something like that. But that is not true. In fact, if you look at Osho during his earlier days, you will see that he was wearing very simple clothes. He used to wear just a white dhoti, white lungi, you know, and yeah, he was very simple. But as time progressed and the organizational structure came into place, they decided that he should wear certain kind of robes, he should look like a rich man's guru, and he should look in a certain way. So, there is it is very difficult. And some people, they go by the behavior, that they have to behave in a certain way. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Alex Jordan, who's traveled the world in the hunt for spirituality. And he also said to me that, some of the masters with whom he had very profound transmissions, profound sort of awakening experiences, but uh, they were not nice people. So morality is again not a factor for judging or deciding if someone is enlightened. So morality also is a very tricky thing. Some people say no, only vegetarian food in some spiritual organizations. And there you see Eckhart Tolle, there you see Dalai Lama, there you see, Muhammad, Jesus, so many masters who, realized without following that requirement. And it's very dicey, it's very dicey. So it's very difficult to put everything in a box, put spiritual masters or enlightened people in one box. And not all enlightened people want to be spiritual masters. That's also another, sort of thing, because some enlightened people, they are very simple. And I think simplicity is one of the things you will see in uh, almost all of the people who are so-called enlightened, because the very idea, that, and it doesn't mean that, again, simplicity doesn't mean they'll be very humble. They need not suffer from humility. So if you go to the Aghoris now, the Aghoris will not represent a sattvic image, or they will not dress in a certain way, but definitely their sadhanas and their attainment and their understanding can be at a very high level, you know. And even there can be different levels. People at different levels of understanding. And eventually, it's not about levels, because when you jump off the roller coaster, as UG Krishnamurti says, you just jump. So you just jump. So now the thing you must be thinking is that what is it then that we can see and we can understand? And for that, again, I come back to the point which Ganga Amma had showed me, is that Guru is a tattva. So you can learn from anything, anywhere, and the learning can come. And I think the real guru or the real person who because see, you're not interested in the enlightened person. You're interested in learning something from him. And hence, this question was asked to me by a couple of people in the last 2 days, which is why I'm making this video. So you're not actually asking it because you are interested in decoding the appearance of someone enlightened, but you are asking because probably you think that, is it safe to learn from him? Has he really made it, or is he going to misguide me? So it's also a safety concern in some way. And yeah, I think the job or the real master or someone who's really wants to do good for you is going to break some notions for you, and it's not going to be pleasant when that happens. Like yesterday, I was sharing an experience where I was completely, put off by a certain satsang teacher. But that very putting off put me into silence. That experience put me into silence. And that silence was not an experience. It was just a stop, to many things. And different masters are going to express the same thing in different ways if you are receptive. Because again, it is that Guru Tattva, that element which is talking to you. So if you're tuned to the existence, if your longing is there, it's not necessarily the amount of sadhana, but it's the longing. And if the longing is there, you'll tune in somehow and you'll understand that this is right for me. And this is the message they're trying to give. Even some messages which appear very contradictory, they can actually be saying the same thing to you or leading to the same thing. So I think this business of how they look is not important. It's what message coming through. And it's not the same person you need to stick, and it's not an arranged marriage where you're going to stay throughout your life with one person. No, things evolve, practices evolve. The kind of traditional schools or spiritual schools or whatever you go to, it is going to change from time to time. And that is a good sign. I was talking to a Naga sadhu called Baba Rajeshwar Giriji. And I told him that, see, you are associated with this Naga sadhu tradition, you're from the Juna Akhada, and you have like a very, set path and you've stuck to this tradition. And he said to me, no, that's not the case. It's not that I've just stuck to the tradition. Yes, I adore it. I respect it. I respect my guru who guided me for a long time. But there are times when, I have my own understanding of things. And he said that is a must when you are evolving, when you are growing, because there is one conditioning which your parents gave. Then the spiritual tradition or spiritual school that you join in your initial seeking is where you get another set of conditioning which sort of tends to cancel out or override the initial conditioning. And eventually you go beyond that also. So the practices are going to change with time. That's what he told me. So this idea of sort of having a happy marriage is not, I don't think, from what I've gathered, it's not come across to me that it's a happy marriage. It's always you are learning new things, you are always growing, and you are becoming a, I won't use the word person, but you are, in the linear sense, since we are talking about something related to the mind and in a linear fashion, for the sake of this linear conversation, I would say that uh, things will evolve with time if we are taking the context of time. The things will keep evolving. So it's not a matter of worry if you are not found your guru. It's not a matter of worry if you cannot recognize who's an enlightened one. If you've been put there, right place, right time, and you get a feeling that maybe I can ask something, maybe I can learn something, then just do that. It's not a big risk. And the association of being close to someone, it's, you know it happens, like being close to a guru, and then after a few years people abuse that person and say, no, I had a bad experience with that person. Even I've done this. So it is again that there was something which had to bring you there. It was just meant to happen that way. And definitely there also has to be gratitude for things that you learn. So even a bad person can teach you many good things. So so-called bad person can teach you many good things. So many important things, many vital things. So again, the morality and enlightenment being put together. Some people say, oh, he was an enlightened master, now he's accused of so and so thing, or he's jailed, and even Christ was crucified. So it's really very difficult to, you know, mm, sort of uh, be a judge for these kind of things. It's very difficult to recognize. And linear, yes, definitely on the linear journey. It's not a linear journey. Spirituality is not linear. It's something where, things can just suddenly arise, suddenly happen. So you never know what will happen. And yeah, so I think I've shared with you different perspectives. You can think about it. You can see what comes up for you. If you have any questions, you can join us on some of the sessions. Maybe Sunday we'll have a session. We'll talk more about these things, about this, world of so-called spirituality or whatever you want to call it, journey, inner journey, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, so I think it's very difficult. And again, one last thing is that yoga schools and certain things are more in vogue, nowadays. So they will say, the person has to be sattvic. Not necessary. Certain sadhanas themselves are not sattvic. Certain traditions, you cannot be sattvic in certain kind of spiritual practices. So not necessary, anything, you cannot put it in one box, basically. And some people say, no, he's talking in a certain way. not necessary, you know. If the person is at ease with himself and ease with his condition, that is his enlightenment. And it doesn't have to look in a certain way, and they don't have to talk in a certain way. Maybe those of us who've been into meditation or some kind of yogic practices may have a certain, you know, way of talking in a very calm and composed manner or something like that, which is nice, but not necessary, you know, and that may put people at ease, make them feel safe and things like that. Not necessary that's a condition for enlightenment. What is the start point for one person can be the end point for another, and vice versa. So this was again what Dr. Yugandhar had shared with me when he was in Goa. So there are a lot of these things which I can share, and I'm glad to share this. So think about it. If you have questions arising, comments arising, let me know. And as usual, let's keep the sharing going on. Share your perspective, share your views. Cheers. गिरिधर है महिषासुर में गिरिधर है महिषासुर में